Welcome back to the podcast. My name is R.E. We have another special episode for you today with guest Diabolical Ham. Love that name. No, it's not his real name, but you can check him out on TikTok. How are you doing today?
Yeah, man, things are really, really good. Thank you for having me on the podcast, dude. Honestly, it's a true honor.
No problem. And again, on this podcast, we discuss emotional intelligence, mental health, and self love. Have any of those topics really been on your mind as of late?
Yes, literally in terms of self love, because self love is one of the key things recently, specifically for me. Um, I'm currently going through what I would currently say is the happiest moment of my life at the moment in terms of self love and that kind of thing. So I've always struggled with dealing with different thoughts, things that happened in the past, all that kind of stuff. And only recently have I just learned to start loving myself, just being myself, and putting myself out there, which is, I think, on the TikTok page as well. It shows, especially with the ham house parties, all that kind of stuff. It's all about showing self love, appreciating oneself, and showing yourself that you are worth it. So
I love to hear that. So I want to definitely just dive deeper into your mental health and self-love journey because as you said, this is the point in your life where you feel like you love yourself the most, but you had to have worked to get to this point. So where do you think that your whole mental health and self-love journey started?
I think in terms of self love, I would say that it started over the past year. But my mental health journey that started all the way back in high school, because the story was where I live now. I hadn't always lived there. I moved up about 10 years ago, and obviously I changed. I changed high school because I started my year seven in one high school, and then moved into year eight in a different high school. So obviously a new set of friends. I wasn't with the friends that I'd already had, and that kind of thing. And I was sort of treated as kind of like an outsider, and it kind of showed. And I wasn't sort of naive, I'd sort of say, to the things that were going on around me at the time as well. Like I sort of felt like all the other kids there were ahead of me in terms of like their knowledge of like what's going on, etc. in the world. And I just sort of got on the receiving end of that a lot. And I put up with that until for 4 years. It wasn't so bad in my final year because everyone was sort of maturing by then and all that kind of stuff. But it's some of the stuff that did happen. It sticks with you. It really, really does. It stays with you for a long, long time. And still to this day, I'm still thinking about that. Even though, like I said, it's probably the happiest period of my life right now. Still in the back of my mind, there's all these different thoughts, etc. From going back to way back then, because it's all about people's perception of myself, and do I need to prove to people that I'm worth it and that kind of thing. That's always the key thoughts of mine. But that all started back in high school, and even going through college and now university, like I keep saying, always going back to those kind of things. And I can sort of see as well, like the way that some people treated me sometimes. It's all sort of like it's sort of like a bit of an outsider, a bit of an outcast. It's not really a pleasant thing to go through. And what can that can do to somebody's mental health is always, it can be quite damaging, really. Or sometimes it's can be damaging in the sense that you look at things and think, like something you might view, somebody thinks that you looking at you like, just to brush you off the side, when in actual fact that's not the case. But because you've had that in the past, it's always in the back of your mind. It's always there. It's always it's like a key driver, really. And those thoughts don't change. But up until now, recently, where I've sort of, like the past year, in terms of self-love, I've sort of really have properly been coming out of my shell. And like I say on TikTok, the ham house parties where I just, I dance and people love it, music, all that kind of stuff. And just being allowed, be free to be me. And, like I did go to a lot of therapists and that kind of thing to get to the stage where I am now. One of the key things that was discussed during my time with the therapist, especially at the university, because they were excellent, was, I think I mentioned it in my podcast as well, is the thing about the pavement. If you're looking down at the pavement, it sort of gives you, it sort of demonstrates to other people what your outlook on life is, or what you're feeling deep down. Because if you can take away your look at the pavement and you can look up and you can look at your surroundings, the world's a beautiful place, and that kind of stuff, and you see things differently, perceptions change. And that is one of the key things for me as well, in terms of my self-love journey to get to the point where I am now, is, just something as simple as looking up when you're walking. that is just, it's so simple, but yet so impactful, and that's just part of the reason to where I am now.
Yeah, I love to hear that because I used to be one of those people when my freshman year in college, when I was going through depression and anxiety, that I was always looking down at the ground, and you could tell just by looking at me that something was up. And it's funny that I actually wrote a poem in my new book, Heaven is Forever. It's called Always Looking Up. And it's about, again, always looking up while you're walking, but always looking up to the bright side of life, to gratitude, to things like that. And I want to go deeper into your journey, if you're okay with that, and ask, you said that you were on the receiving end of things. So what specifically were you on the receiving end of?
So basically, when I was in high school and all that kind of stuff, I did start I did try to do YouTube and social media back then when I was about 13. I did admittedly make the mistake of sharing it with the people around there, because obviously people my age at that particular time, it was all like trolls and getting, like people just bullying me and all that kind of stuff. And it was quite hurtful at the time. When really I should have taken that outlook in terms of, I shouldn't have really cared about the I should have just carried on with it. Um, but also in terms of just things like, like I was sort of, I don't know how to describe it really. It's sort of like an alpha male situation, if that makes sense. So in terms of like a lot of people around me, or like the people who are like popular and all that kind of stuff, I'd always be the one on the receiving end of the jokes, all that kind of stuff. And like I know like some of them, like even some of my friends at the time, it like would say something, but it's still at the time I couldn't really take that kind of a joke because it was quite impactful to me and quite damaging, really. Um, so whenever like jokes were made, it was usually about me. And one of the key things as well was I when I was back in high school, I was really just wanting to be with someone, actually be in a relationship, which is actually kind of looking back at it, I probably shouldn't have been that going that way. But in terms of that, it's like everyone would be like, oh, if I fancied someone, it'd be like, oh, he fancied me, that's disgusting, blah 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 blah. I'd be leak, I'd get embarrassed, all that kind of stuff. Until eventually, I just felt a bit kind of alone in some situations. That's also a thing that stuck with me as well. In terms of, if I wanted to talk to a woman, it's like, do are they going to let me back? All this kind of stuff, all this all these kind of thoughts that just go through your mind. And I know high school for me was like, what, like 5 6 years ago, but still it's quite had a big impact on my life, really, in terms of my emotional damage, mental health, all that kind of stuff. Even going through college as well, I could sort of see that in college I only had one friend who's actually my best friend now, and I'm glad he is. But in the back of my mind as well, I wasn't really entwined with the rest of the classes, all that kind of stuff. Everyone else was hanging out, and I was just sort of, here with one guy. But back then I was sort of seeing it as a disadvantage. But I suppose now that I sort of look at it as an advantage. Like, I'd rather have, or I wish I learned this. I'd rather have one friend than many friends who I don't really like. Yes, I might hang around with them a lot, but I don't really see them outside or anything like that. Just someone to be close to and that kind of thing. So it's all just, I don't really know how to describe most of it as such, but it's all quite, a lot of people hopefully who are watching this, like, bullying is one of the key ones. Like, some people think to realize what that can do to a person, even if you're just saying a comment that you think that, oh right, okay, this is going to be a funnier joke, and that at someone else's expense, it's not really a good thing to be a part of, and that kind of thing. So it's just one of those things, unfortunately. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you're able to share that and be so vulnerable and speak up, because I'm sure that'll help at least one person that's going through a similar scenario. And I know that specifically because I've been on some TikTok live sometimes when some of the people have been in like middle school, and they talk about getting bullied, the exact same thing. And I can't even imagine if I was on TikTok in middle school. I know that you weren't. I don't think it existed back then, but I couldn't even imagine being on social media, especially doing what I'm doing right now in middle school. I know I would have gotten bullied. And I know that some people don't like what I'm doing right now and probably say it behind my back. But even if they said it to my face, I'm at the point right now where I'm so confident in what I'm doing and adding value to people that I'm so content and confident in myself that I won't let their opinions affect me. but I know how hard it is when you're 12, 13 years old to let it really get to you. So when do you think you really started to tell other people about how you were feeling and sharing your mental health issues?
I think it was the last year of college was 100% when I started going to therapy, started opening up more about it, especially with my best friend as well, because I started opening it about him a lot more as well. It's actually quite interesting as well that you find that, like most people are going through similar situations. Like it turns out that, like my best friend has this, he's quite a popular kid, he's quite entwined, knows a lot of people, all that kind of stuff. But deep down, he's got similar situations to me. And then just to connect with someone on that level, I realized that, like sometimes, admittedly, it's taken me until now to fully open up about it, because I do have periods where I'm confident enough to share it, but other times I'm quite, I want to conceal myself. I want to be quiet about it. And it's honestly, like I say, like honestly, college definitely when I was coming out in terms of saying about my mental health, all that kind of stuff, and then with uni, with all like the therapists and stuff like that. Like the therapist I did have, she was really, really good in terms of getting my anxiety and depressions and thoughts and all that on track. So where I am at now, that's not to say that the thoughts are gone, because, like I think with anything really, they're never truly gone. It's just how you control them, how you manipulate them, it's one of those things of trying to turn something negative into something positive. Like I always had the problem, which I think is a lot of people possibly may have themselves, is living in the past. Past, future, it doesn't matter. What matters right now is you in the present. And I think that, all my life so far, like especially my teenage years, especially, I've lived a lot in the past rather than, living in the here and the now, which is really, really important in terms of mental health, because obviously the past can't be changed. But what you can change is you here and the now and what you do. And like teaching yourself self-love, and the lessons that I've learned, especially over the past year, have really, really helped me to achieve the state of mind that I'm currently in at the moment.
Yeah. So do you feel as though, because just speaking from my experience, I know when I was going through these mental health issues, that what was stopping me from speaking up and telling other people was the stigma around these issues. You don't really hear people talking about it, and you don't think it's okay. You think people will judge you, will think that you're weak, will call you names, will kind of talk behind your back. So I waited months to tell anybody, but it sounds like you waited years. How long did you wait to tell anybody? And was it for that reason or another reason?
It was, I'd probably say I didn't even tell my own parents until I was like 17. Because, I didn't want to, it was one of those things, I didn't want to involve them, all that kind of stuff. I didn't want to embarrass myself. I think that was one of the key ones as well. And obviously, like your parents love you no matter what, they're always going to be there and that, but I was just a bit shy, and just to conceal my emotions at the time, and I should have opened up about it. But it has taken me years and years and years to actually get to the stage where I am now, where I can open up about how I'm feeling, open up about how things are going, and because I've always been one of those people who've been quite shy. Like I'm more confident now than I was, say, a few years ago. But in terms of something like that, I didn't want to get other people involved. I didn't want to make other people upset, especially my parents, because I know that they would be quite upset if they knew what I've been going through, really, and all that kind of stuff. And like it got to, admittedly, got to stages at some points in my life where you'd feel like doing self harm to yourself, like you wouldn't feel worth it, all that kind of stuff. And like to get to that point, to get to that stage, especially when like during high school, when people have sort of made you feel like this. And then I think what I found as well is, like I think especially with something like bullying, if someone bullies you too much and you get to that point of where you're feeling specifically like that, and then they realize what they've said, they turn around saying, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. But then at that point, it's too late. I think most people need to realize that, just think about what you're saying, things like that before you say it, because if you put someone in a certain state of mind, it can be too late to, revert them back to how they were feeling that particular day, because it's all an uphill struggle. It's all it's not as easy as it sounds to go straight back to where you were feeling if you are feeling down, depressed, etc. And if someone's made you feel like that, then they need to realize that what that emotional damage can do to a person.
Yeah, you bring up a very interesting point, which I'd like to discuss now, which is I'm a big proponent of taking personal responsibility for things. And part of this comes from the fact that I used to not take responsibility for my mental health issues. I always used to blame it on the world around me. And I realized that I was giving my power away to other people. And a big part of this is that you want to try to assign blame to these people that hurt you and shared all these like vicious words. But when you really look at it, the reason partly that these people are trying to hurt you is because they feel hurt inside also. So it kind of comes down to a bigger issue of how do they not know how to empathize with other people? It's a big word, empathize. And it's because they weren't taught emotional intelligence in kindergarten. So do you think that anybody would have really benefited from learning about this stuff at the age of like 7 or 8?
Yeah, I kind of feel like that, like kids nowadays, especially in the UK, in terms of like attitudes and all that kind of stuff, it's all wrong. It's like some of the kids that I see walking around, I think I was queuing just to get some food the other day, and I could see these kids making fun of like other like these delivery drivers walking into the place to pick up food and stuff like that. And I was just thinking to myself about like what is today's society coming to? Why isn't these people learn the consequences of, like comments and cruel comments, especially, saying things to someone, how that could impact them. If that person had heard them, what would they think and all that kind of stuff. And I think that, from a very young age, people need to be taught these kind of things because, it's in terms of later life, you might come across someone, and if you've not been taught it, you might think, oh, I'm only saying this as a joke, because that is one of the common things. Oh, it's only a joke. But that thing that's only a joke could be quite impactful to somebody. I think it's important that at a young age, like you say, 7, 8 years old, people be taught about mental health and the repercussions of bullying someone, mean comments, like anonymously bullying someone on social media, all that kind of thing. And I think that if that was taught, then more people would be aware of what's going on in the world around them, how impactful one comment that you think, oh yeah, this is only a joke, how impactful that comment could be to somebody else, and not realize the emotional damage that they've inflicted upon that person.
Yeah, exactly. People don't realize, and that's what we need to be taught as well, that I'm just realizing now. People don't realize the power of words. The power of words to uplift and inspire people, but also the power of words to tear people down and kind of suck the energy out of them, which is why it's so important to me to share my message across all these platforms and to speak up. Because if I could just help one person who's in sixth grade or who's 12 or 11 years old going through any types of issues that are similar to what we're going through right now, it would all be worth it. But the thing is, one of the posts that I posted recently on TikTok that went viral was you can make somebody's day by saying three simple words: I love you. And think about how simple that is, just saying three words: I love you, because everybody just wants to be loved deep down. But instead, we're not taught to be positive and share love with other people because the norm in our society is negativity and trying to tear other people down. So I'm trying to think about, where does this whole root issue come down to? Does it come down to the way our society is structured, or do you think it comes down to the individual person and the decisions that they make?
I think that personally, I think it's through the way that society is structured, and specifically, I'm going to talk about stereotypes here. Because like stereotypically, if you look at, it's all about, like going about the alpha male situation before. You see someone who might be like on their own, a bit quiet, all that kind of stuff. People would be thinking, oh, they'd be a good target to bully and that kind of thing. And specifically, like just stereotypes in terms of sports and individuals as well as another key one. Like big, strong people, all that kind of stuff. Like I think as well, in terms of bullying, it's usually them because they're bigger and stronger. So what is the person who's a bit skinnier going to do about it? It's honestly, like, I think today's society is just structured in the wrong way. I really do, and I think that one of the key factors of that, I think, as well, is the rise of social media. specifically, because it has created so many different stereotypes that, like especially like kids nowadays, if they're not educated properly, they'll see something and think that's the norm. Excuse me, that's the norm. That's what they have to do, or this is a cool thing to say, I think that society today is just structured in the complete wrong way, in the really, really wrong way, and I think that stereotypes play a huge part in that.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I really want to dive deeper into this because while you were talking, I was thinking of a way to think about the whole, like the athletes, the big person kind of ganging up on the little guy. And I kind of look at this now, just thinking from an evolutionary perspective. Think about maybe 5,000 years ago when we didn't really have as much of a structure as we had now. And you have the big kind of hunter people that are going out and getting the food and basically killing animals so the whole tribe can eat. And then you have the people that were kind of weaker that stayed back. And think about when those people got back from basically an 8-hour day of chasing and hunting and killing animals, bringing them back. And then they get back and they're just talking to these people like, oh, what did you do today? Kind of, oh, did you cook with the women or sew or whatever they did? I think that that could be the root of where this all comes from. What do you think about that specific theory that I just made up?
Yeah, I think that's actually it's a very good point to make. Because like you say, like you've got like the big strong man just like, oh, I'm doing all the work, what are you kind of doing? Which I suppose that always goes back to the theory that, like no one is not adding value. So you say the people who are going out hunting, that'll be their role. That's what they're best at. Whereas, like the skinnier guy might be better, like you say, like for example, like doing sewing or something like that. They might be better at doing that. It's not that the fact that they've done nothing, they've actually done something of equal worth. But in today's society, because they're the big strong men, have gone out to hunt. They're apparently that's more important than what the other person's doing. It's a really, really good theory actually, because I think that's the root of it all today. For example, you might have the like the athletes, for example, the big strong athletes be like, oh, I'm playing football, all that kind of stuff, compared to maybe someone who's doing art and they're thinking, oh, he's doing art, that's boring. That's, when actual fact that that person doing art, one day they could be a famous artist, they could be adding something to the world. It's not the fact that, being big, strong, confident, all that. It's not everything. It's honestly, every single person in this world adds something to the world in their own way.
Yeah, and going to try to trace this back and looking at it from another perspective, it seems that the way we evolved or the way these guys evolved was that they wanted to suppress their emotions. They wanted to be the physically dominating people. And you see that in our society, how it's a very, if you want to call it like the patriarchy, like put words on this stuff, like male dominated, male enforcing their will on other aspects. And what that does is that it leaves the emotional aspect out of it, which is kind of the feminine aspect. Women are more in tune with emotions. And I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, I was kind of taught by, programmed by society through TV shows and what I saw around me that guys weren't supposed to feel emotions. Guys weren't supposed to express emotions. You're not supposed to cry if you're a guy. Oh, that rhymed. That's funny. You're not supposed to cry if you're a guy because that makes you weak. And when I realized that that was a bunch of BS, that this was being programmed into my mind, that I could start to think for myself and realize, wow, if I need to cry and I cry, I feel a lot better after. And I kind of cleansed out my emotions. But I think we're going to go through a revolution in our current day society where guys are going to have to become more in touch with emotions, or else we run the risk of legitimately becoming extinct off of this planet by killing each other. Because all these wars come from the fact that men aren't emotionally intelligent. They haven't been taught this. And maybe it wasn't useful for evolutionary survival up to this point of going and hunting and killing animals. But now that we're at the point where we're a little more civilized, I'm not going to get to the point to say that we're actually civilized because we still kill people for no reason, invade other countries. But if we can start a movement to teach people about emotional intelligence, mental health, self love, and help people realize that if you just love other people, that will come back to you and make everything better. That'll all be worth it.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting because, like, the stereotype is that males don't cry. you know, like you say, like females are more in touch with their emotions, and that's okay, that's brilliant. But in terms of a guy, in terms of a man, like you talk, like you say, like through mediums like TV shows, media, all that kind of stuff, it's all about men don't cry, and you're weak if you cry, when in actual fact you're not. And I don't think it's, in terms of male mental health, it's not talked about enough. It really, really isn't. You know, like I think um, it's definitely not talked about enough, and I think it needs to be, you know, like taught courses, all that kind of stuff. You know, to teach men that it's okay to cry, it's okay to be in touch with your emotions, because you know, like you can't just ignore them. You know, you can't just put on this mask as such, this persona. And it's actually quite interesting because I always go back to like most of my quotes and stuff I actually do get from Doctor Who, admittedly. But there was something about you know, during Matt Smith's era when he regenerated into Peter Capaldi, and it was sort of they were talking about lifting this veil. You know, like the lady alien. You know, under the veil there's this alien, there's this mask, and people will be shocked and scared by it. When in actual fact, like if you were talking about male mental health, you know, if you had that veil on, lifting that veil to then be in tune with your emotions, you know, admitting that they are there and they're always going to be a part of you. You know, it is okay to cry, to have these feelings, to talk to people. You know, and I think it needs to be raised awareness more, a lot more. I'm not saying that female mental health, you know, that's equally as important as male mental health. But what I'm saying is the stereotype, like you say, is for males to not cry.
Yeah, and that's a good point that we kind of need to differentiate that. Overall, I would say, at least from my experience of talking to people, interviewing them about mental health, that men and women have mental health issues about different things. Women are a lot more about body shaming and social media and eating disorders. And that's not to overgeneralize. Everybody has different mental health issues of everything. And some guys might have those body issues and body shaming, but a lot more of guys have to do with not being in touch, being in tune with their emotions. And this is one of the main subjects I wrote about in my first book, The Emotions Hoarder. I was the emotions hoarder. I was hoarding my emotions. If you think about a hoarder, that if you've ever seen any of those hoarding TV shows where their room is just a complete mess, they don't want to throw anything away. And the metaphor is so perfect because what are you doing when you're hoarding emotions? You're clinging to them. You're getting a sense of identity from them. You feel as though if you get rid of these painful negative emotions or thoughts from the past, that all of a sudden is going to invalidate your existence because you get such a big part of your ego is invested in this story about the past and how you were harmed and how you were wronged in a certain way. And I'm not saying that you weren't. I'm not saying that I wasn't. But at a certain point, I realized that telling myself the story over and over again about how it was somebody else's fault really took my power away from me. And it took my ability to heal a lot longer because I wasn't able to fully feel my emotions, bring them to the surface, as you will, and then let them out, kind of clean out my house, as I would say it. Do you resonate
Yeah.
with that?
Yeah, I completely resonate with that, and it's interesting that you say about, you know, like obviously not to blame other people. Well, that is actually the case. You know, you shouldn't blame others, and I wish that I'd learned that as well. You know, I think that's something that needs to be taught, is specifically because, like, yes, they may be a key contributor to why you're feeling like this, but only you as an individual can realize that their words are just words. You know, it's like if you wrote all the mean comments on a piece of paper, that's all they're ever going to be, comments on a piece of paper. You know, that they're not real. And I think that it's interesting because like people need to realize that, you know, like if especially when you're in going through high school, all that kind of stuff, middle school, they need to realize that, you know, words you can think they're impactful aren't actually impactful because it, they're not real. They're not affecting you as such. It's just someone saying something. You know, it's not going to impact you for the rest of your life unless you let it. Um, because I think that's one of the key points as well, is that, you know, if you let these words get to you, then that is where the point where you think they become real. You've created this illusion where these words, these comments, you know, what people are saying, it's all become real. You know, it's sort of become part of this illusion, this norm that you've created, and I think it's something that most people need to escape from. and just think to themselves, I am worth it. I deserve self-love. I'm confident with who I am. Like, yes, I might not be the strongest person in the world. Yes, I might not be this alpha male, but I am happy and content with being me, and nobody else in this world can honestly ask you to be any more than that.
Yeah, I love that. You bring up a great point there, which I 100% agree with, is the fact that other people's opinions are only going to be as important as you let it. If you have a great deal of, if I put a great deal of importance on, say, what my parents think about me, and they say something very hurtful or mean to me, then I'm going to be a lot more hurt than if somebody on the internet that I don't know, that I don't think that their thought is important to me at all, says something mean about me. And it has a lot to do with the fact that your friends and family could be the ones that are hurting you the most because you put such a great deal of importance on their thoughts and their opinions. And I know that doesn't seem to be from your mental health story, and it doesn't seem to be from my journey as well. But I know that there are a ton of people out there that you could boil down a lot of their mental health issues to either being mistreated or even abused by their parents.
Yeah, I've luckily never ever experienced that, but I know that some people have experienced that, so I can't really resonate in terms of that perspective. And it all just goes down to the point where, like you say, like people go through different things. Everyone's journey is different. And there is guaranteed if some people think, I'm all alone in this, which is one of the key phrases that most people say, I am alone with this. There is at least one other person on this planet. It's 100%, and there's probably someone around you that you don't know about who's going through the exact same thing. And to talk it out, is honestly the best thing in the world. And that's something that I wish that I'd learned years and years ago, to talk it out with somebody. Let them try and help you. Let them try and get your confidence back up. And if you've got something that you can, if you've got two people who have the same story, similar situations, all that kind of stuff, to connect with them on a real level. I think both of those individuals will come out feeling so much better for it, and then go into the next day thinking, right, going to change my perspective on things. Let's focus on all that's positive. Let's focus on all this kind of stuff. I am not alone, and I think that's one of the things as well. Like when you see a phrase and it's like "you are not alone," it's one of the key things to say to somebody.
Yeah, I agree 100%, 100,000%. Because when I was going through my mental health issues, I did feel like I was all alone. I was by myself, kept this stuff all to myself, and I didn't see anybody on social media talking about how they went through mental health issues. I didn't see any celebrities or famous people who we're supposed to look up to, that they don't talk about this stuff either. But it brings another good point, and I remember you saying something about like lifting the veil. And my perspective on this, so I read this book, or these series of books this summer, called The Law of One. You probably never heard of it. I'll definitely send you a link to this after, because you can read it all for free online. But this stuff was truly life changing for me, just the material that came out of it. And one of the things they mention is that this veil. So right now we're in what's called third density. We're third density consciousness. This is getting a little esoteric, woo woo, but it'll all kind of add up and make sense, hopefully, as I say it. So we're in third density consciousness, which means that we're self-aware. We're aware that we are alive, but we're not always aware of the bigger picture of what's going on. And as you go up, there's fourth density, fifth density, sixth density, seventh density. And the point is that at third density is the only place where you have this veil over you, that you can't understand that you're connected to every single other person. You're connected to every other tree, plant. I know this sounds out there, but when you realize that we're all connected, that we're all the same one, anything that you do to hurt anybody else is going to hurt you. And the problem is that if you don't understand this connection, if you think that you're just your ego, if you think that you're separate than other people, you're not going to feel that hurt when you hurt somebody else, because you don't believe that that's you. But when you truly understand that the person that you're hurting or the thing that you're hurting is you, you're going to feel that pain inside.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Like honestly, like you're saying before about the first degree, it's like almost like you've got like blinkers on. You've got like this. A lot of people have this mindset of it, sort of, to metaphorically put it, this like peripheral vision. You've got this certain channel focusing on things, without ignoring what's going on around you, without seeing the bigger picture. Like I was saying earlier about the whole pavement thing, like again, that is an example of like a metaphorical peripheral vision. You're looking at the floor. you're not looking at what's around you. You're not seeing how beautiful the world actually is. You know, how all connected we actually all are together, all in this together. And I think especially if you were to put it into today's perspective, if you were looking at like the COVID-19 pandemic and all that kind of stuff, I think that also has shown people we're all in this together. We're all connected. We're all interconnected. Because I know people with mental health have specifically struggled during this pandemic. You know, not being able to see family, friends, all that kind of stuff. But I think it has, you know, a positive we can take away from this pandemic is that it has opened a lot of people's eyes to the fact that we're all connected. You know, this peripheral vision thing, this stereo, again, this is another stereotype, this peripheral vision, obviously all metaphorically speaking. You know, so actually just open your eyes, look around the world, notice people, smile at someone when you're walking down the street, ask someone how they are, you know, stuff like that, you know, can really, really open someone's mind.
Yeah. And it really emphasizes that the small things matter because nothing is ever actually small. Again, it's the importance that you give it. So if somebody tells you that they love you and it means nothing to you, that's the importance that you give on it. But if it was somebody whose opinion that you truly care about, that's truly important to you, that could make your day, that could make your year, that could make maybe your entire life just by saying three simple words. And I want to get into on a more positive note. So, what were some of the things that you did to get yourself out of the abyss, as I would call it? What do you do to show yourself love, to take care of your mental health?
Well, one of the things that I do is obviously, like I keep going, obviously keep going back to the pavement thing, is looking up when I'm walking around. That's one of the things that I did. I gave journaling a try. That wasn't really for me. So instead, I just practiced my Warhammer with my models, etc. So I just build and paint and sort of play games and that kind of stuff, which is really fun to do. It just sort of takes my mind off things. And I just try to sort of not distract myself, but just do things that I love, do things that I'm intertwined with in order to, because you know, if I am feeling down one day, try and get myself doing something productive, something meaningful to sort of take my mind off that what I'm particularly thinking about. And if it does get too much, you know, like sometimes I do actually write something down just to sort of answer my own questions or stuff like that, just to sort of get it on a piece of paper or maybe even just talk it out with somebody. You know, like I say, it took me years and years and years to get to the point now where I can openly talk about how I'm feeling with people. And when I find out that people are feeling the same as me, you know, to connect on that level as well, that also helps it out. So there's various different things I can do. But building and painting models is probably my favorite thing to do, just because it's so relaxed and intertwined. And actually recently, even going like TikTok live, that actually helps. Even if I'm feeling down, like I pretty much go live every day except Mondays now. I can just talk to people, you know, and just completely forget about what I was thinking about. You know, we have like maybe about like 10 people in the stream or something like that, and they're all talking comments. I'm just talking to them, you know, because it's kind of nice because I'm one of those people who does love to talk to the people around me. I'm quite a social person. You know, I love to meet new people and all that kind of stuff, and that really, really does help with my mental health.
Yeah, I love to hear all those things because, as I mentioned, everybody has different unique ways in which they take care of themselves best. I share from my experience, but ultimately, it's whatever works for the individual person, which is great to get your perspective on like making models and going TikTok live because those are never things that I would have guessed could help somebody's mental health, could show somebody self-love. And I'll always talk about it from my perspective. Journaling was one of the things that completely changed my life, but it didn't work for you. So it shows that everybody is unique. Not everything works the same for some people. One thing that I would say worked for me that I know would work for any single person, I would be willing to bet a lot of money on this, but I won't, is cold showers. Have you ever tried cold showers?
I've tried cold showers. Usually not when it's during the winter, but I have had one during the when it's warm in the summer and spring. Because admittedly, I do get a bit too cold when it's in the winter. I did try it before because I did hear that's actually quite good for mental health. And actually, I'll tell you what. To be honest, now that I think about it, a good bath was always good for me. Just to relax in the bath, like that's one of the things that's also good. You know, just being by yourself, just mellowing. nice warm bath like that. When I think about it, that, actually did kind of help me when I was feeling a bad day. I'll always hop in the bath. Like subconsciously now, I just did it. But when I think about it, I was actually doing it to relax. So that's another thing actually that I do to help my mental health out.
Yeah, that's interesting as well, because another one that I would have never thought of. But the thing with the cold showers, so I take my shower warm, like I'm not completely out there, not completely Wim Hof, if you ever heard of him, but
Yeah.
I end the shower cold every single time, which is I finish it, so I'll turn the water all the way cold and just stand there for maybe 30 seconds to a minute. And I've just seen how that is just, I've probably done that every day for maybe 3.5 years now. And the profound impact that that's had on my mental health and then permeating through the rest of my life is just amazing. And I can see it as it is making me expand my comfort zone. You are never going to be comfortable turning that water all the way cold. Even me doing it every single day, my ego is still, no, don't do it. Don't do it. You realize you attain mastery over your ego, you attain mastery over your mind. So that's one thing that I'll recommend to anybody. And for anybody who doesn't say it works, I will just say that it all has to come down with your mental strength. If you can't stand in the cold shower, some people might not like to hear this, but it shows weakness, mental weakness, which I used to have 100%. And it's not saying that anything is wrong with you, but some people try to blame the external event or, oh, it's too cold. Well, what do you think people used to do to bathe before hot water was invented?
Yeah, 100%. Like it's interesting you say about like the mental willpower to do things, because there is some situations now with me personally, I'm sure everybody else out there too, where you think about doing something, but you're sort of like, no, I don't want to do that kind of thing. And it's interesting, like in terms of me, it's always, like going for a run, for example. This is, I haven't done it yet, but because this is one of those things where you just get that mental willpower to sort of get myself into these cues to sort of be like, right, today I'm going to go up, get out, go for a run, come back. Admittedly, I'm still trying to get through that barrier, because it's like, oh, run. Because at the minute I'm thinking like runs are boring, I don't want to do it, all that kind of stuff. When I know for a fact that if I did do it, I'd be fitter, I'd feel so much better about it. I'm pretty sure there's a situation with most people where they've had that one thing where it's like, I don't want to do it because of this reason, when it's not really an excuse as such. So and then, if you have that mental willpower to do it and push through that barrier, then you'll be so much better off for it.
Yeah, it all comes down to whether or not you believe the lies that your mind tells you. Everybody likes to assume that their mind tells them the 100% objective truth every time. And whether or not there is something as 100% objective truth, that could be argued, but your mind tells you lies 99.999% of the time. It tells you lies about how you're not worthy. It tells you lies about how you're not deserving of love and all this stuff. And that's just ego. That's just ego trying to block you from finding out that it is kind of irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. Sure, you need an ego, you need a personality to go and experience things and interact with people, but that's not what connects you with everybody else. That's not what connects you with the universe. That's not what connects you with love. And when you kind of tap into that higher version of yourself, maybe your higher self or a deeper version of yourself, which is in your heart center, in your gut, in maybe your third eye, if people believe in that. And the ways that I've done through that is through cold showers and meditation. And have you ever tried meditation before either?
I've never actually tried that before. Like I've gone to try it, and then I suppose again that just shows my mental willpower. I'll get there, maybe a couple seconds in, thinking I can't be bothered with this. Like I'm pretty sure most people have probably been there as well. I think that's one of the main excuses in terms of mental willpower is the I can't be bothered excuse, which that is an invalid excuse. You should be thinking of that kind of thing, but I've tried it before, and to be honest, I do need to actually, I think, get into that, because I think that would actually help in terms of mental health, and then I can actually see for myself, in a calm state of mind, that these thoughts, they're just words. At the end of the day, they're just words in the back of my head. I won't let them control me. I'll, like, just, but it's like I say, it's all about that mental willpower to actually get to doing that, because I will openly admit that in that situation that my mental willpower is not great, and I need to work on that, and I know that. But I think if I do push through that barrier, I'll be so much better off for it.
I love that you say that. You're actually the first person I've had on here that's never meditated before. So it's time for me to share my story, to share my rant about meditation. As you can tell, super passionate about this topic because of how it's changed my mental health, how it's changed my life. So I'll always tell this story about how when I was a freshman in college, going through depression and anxiety, nothing was working for me. I tried going to a therapist, that didn't work for me. I tried a bunch of other things to the point where I was desperate. I remember searching on Google how to cure depression. The only two things that came up were cold showers and meditation. I thought, well, that's stupid, but I tried a bunch of things and it hasn't worked. So what could it hurt to try these things? And those two things completely changed my life. I saw cold showers doing it instantly. There's no such thing as a magic pill, but cold showers are as close as it comes. But
Yeah,
the misperception that people have about meditation is that it's a magic pill, and it's not. It's a cumulative effect. It's something that you need to do consistently to see the effects. The first time that I meditated, I did it for maybe 15 to 30 seconds because it's so tough. You have all these thoughts racing through your mind and you can't handle it. You get scared, you get overwhelmed. And that's the point where most people give up. These people think, well, maybe I'm just not that good at it. Maybe it's just not for me. When have you ever been good at anything that you just did once for 15 seconds? So the next time, I did it for maybe 30 seconds, then a minute, then 2 minutes, 3 minutes. And it's basically like taking your mind to the gym. You're building up this muscle. Imagine when you go to the gym, are you going to pick up an 100-pound weight and start curling it? Or are you going to pick up a 10 to 20-pound weight? It's the same thing with meditation to the point where I've pretty much been doing it every single day for maybe 3 years. And usually in the morning, I pretty much meditate for 20 to 30 minutes at a time. And it is completely day changing, life changing to the point where I'll always share this. I'm never like shy to admit this now because I want other people to experience what I'm feeling because you can't always put words on these things. But when I'm going past 20 to 30 minutes meditating, I'm literally crying tears of joy. Not even I am crying tears of joy. You're just so happy. You're in a state of just inner peace, bliss, self-love, heaven, whatever words you want to put on it isn't going to do it justice than by actually experiencing that. But not everybody is just going to be able to meditate on their first time and get to that state because you're going to have to face again a lot of the negative emotions, the negative thoughts, because those are the things on the surface, and all the very deep emotions, the love, the bliss, the peace, those are on the inside. Those are kind of in the shell. And when you get through the surface, but you're not going to get through the surface if you don't face these negative emotions. And that's where most people give up and say, well, it didn't work for me.
well, I think it's interesting that you bring up the fact that in most of today's society, people will give one go at something and then think, oh, I'm not good at this, I'm going to give it up. I just want to talk about that because that is every single person on this planet, I guarantee, has said that to themselves at one point. And I play tennis outside of as one of my hobbies, and I used to coach a couple of years back. And one of the stories I got is I actually turned this kid's attitude straight round because he was very adamant that he couldn't do it. He couldn't push through it. He's not good at it, all that kind of stuff. And I just sat him down and said, look, things might seem bleak now. It's like with anything, you need to train yourself. You need to practice. You can't expect to be good at something straight away because at the end, if that happened with anything, then we'd all be professionals at something, wouldn't we? Like if I was good at tennis as soon as I picked up the racket, I'd be a professional tennis player right now. But as soon as I had this chat with this kid, he turned around and now actually he's playing at a regional level. And to go back to think that a couple of years ago, I sat down with this guy and said that, you need to practice, you need to train, things might be hard now. You just got to push through that original barrier rather than just give up. Because if you give up, then the battle's already lost, when you had the clear cut advantage to go out and do something with it. I think it's quite a good story actually, because now he's a really good player. And to think that back when I was talking to him, he was ready to give up.
That's awesome. Yeah, that could be applied to anything. I like how that could be applied specifically to meditation because, again, too many people give up too easily. And all you're doing when you give up is you're letting your ego win. You're letting the negative thoughts in your mind win. And all this comes down to is, as simple as it may sound, it is as simple as sitting down and doing nothing and breathing. But the problem is, it's ironic, it's paradoxical how the hardest thing to do is to sit down and do absolutely nothing.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. Like, you know, it's one of those like I say, every person on this planet guaranteed has thought to themselves at one point in their life, I can't do this. When like you can just tell the people who have pushed through with it have actually shown the people who haven't that like if you give it more time, you give it more practice, you can be good at it, because life is all about practice. It's all about doing things over and over again to get good at something. Even if you're just doing it for fun, like some people, obviously not everyone's going to make it as a professional in that particular area, but at the same time you can get to a point where you're just happy with yourself and thinking, why was I thinking to myself about giving up? Why was I saying this to myself? Like, look at where I am now. Like, admittedly, like when I first started playing tennis, I was thinking the exact same things. I wasn't going to get any better, but once I overcame that particular barrier, I'm playing so much better now, and I'm actually got to the point where I'm actually really happy in terms of my progress. And if I had quitted at that point, I would have regretted it for the rest of my life.
Yeah, the thing that I love about tennis also, so I played tennis also, at least for a couple of years. And the thing that I loved about tennis is that I never really took lessons. And I would beat people that took lessons and were programmed and all this stuff because I realized that tennis is probably 90% mental game. It is so reliant on mental game. And the thing is that they don't teach you that. They want to teach you the mechanics of how to hit the ball right. And I just taught myself how to hit the ball. Maybe I didn't hit the ball the same as other people, but it didn't really matter if I was better or worse than them because I was beating them. Why? Because I had a strategy of I'm going to attack their weakness, or I'm not going to make as many mistakes as them because I'm playing more loosely. I'm playing more fun. And it's the same thing with meditating or doing anything, that somebody's just sitting there and they see a bunch of negative thoughts and they're not having fun with it. They're not being loose with it. They think that there's one certain way that you have to meditate and nothing else will work. And there are infinite ways to meditate. You can meditate while just sitting here and being aware of what you're doing. You can meditate guided meditation. You can listen to music. You can do absolutely nothing. You can be laying on your back. You don't have to just be cross-legged. You can be, I usually sit in a chair. You could be sitting on your bed. You could be standing up. You could be doing yoga. The possibilities are literally limitless, but all it is whether you can be disciplined, show up pretty much every day, be consistent, and be patient. And these aren't sexy words in our society. Everybody wants
Yeah.
that magic pill. Everybody wants that magic pill that will just get rid of all their mental health issues. But the point is, what would you gain from that? Because I've noticed from my experience of doing this that what I've gained from all of this is building confidence and building a skill, which is maintaining my mental health, sharing my stories, which are now valuable to other people who are going through a similar thing that could say, oh, well, he meditated every day for 3 years. What am I complaining about? I did it for one day and it didn't work for me. From my experience, I don't think I saw really any benefit from meditating until at least a couple of months into it. And maybe not everybody will feel the same, but that didn't stop me from giving up because I saw very little incremental gains every day. And that's all that I needed. But I also had to trust. I also had to have faith. I never used to have faith, but I had to have faith that if I was going to keep doing this, that it would pay off at some time. And it's just something that I would recommend to anybody. Just find the time, find 5 minutes each day just to sit down, maybe at the start of the day, maybe at the end of the day, to just sit and breathe. And you can either try somebody else's practice or make up your own one. And I would recommend maybe trying somebody else's at first, but once you get into it, once you see what works for you and what doesn't, make your own practice, make it, leave your own unique mark on it.
I think that you've made a couple of interesting points there. And I think the first one I want to talk about is going back to tennis, because I think that if you were looking at that as, say, like a case study for mental health, that particular sport, like you say, it's all mind games. And it actually, I think it's the sport that probably shows you the most what's going on in somebody's head. Because admittedly, like I've obviously gone through the motions when I'm playing. And especially when you know that your skills can beat somebody, but you end up losing, and why do you lose? It's all a mental game. If you miss a couple of shots, you're hesitant to try new things. You're hesitant to think, all right, I might hit this cross court, I might go down the line, I might want to come in and volley this. And you sort of go into this very passive mindset, which is really toxic, unhealthy to get into that. But I know that every single tennis player on this planet will go through that at some stage in their life. Where it's like, I shouldn't be losing this, but I am, because I'm not playing the game that I should be playing. I'm not like you say, it's not taught enough. It's not taught as in like a mental game. It's not taught as it's only about the technique, all that kind of stuff. And then the other point I want to take from that is, like about saying about the benefits. You were talking about meditation, and the other thing I want to say is like a lot of people, I think, in today's society, and you'll probably agree, is a lot of people impatient. And what I mean by that is, if you don't see the benefits straight away, then you dismiss it and think, oh, this isn't for me, rather than give it time to see whether benefits will occur or not. And if you give things time and they do occur, then great. But if you still feel the same way, then that's fine. But at least you've given it a chance. I think a lot of people will sort of look at something, they'll try something. Like, say, for example, with meditation, they might try meditation and then think, I don't see the benefits of this, but they've only done it once, and then that's the end of it. I think you'd agree with me on that.
Yeah. And it comes along the lines of this. So somebody tries meditation like me my first time, I could only do it for 15 to 30 seconds. Some people would look at that and say, I failed. I look at that and say, I just did 15 to 30 more seconds than I've done before. People like to compare themselves to other people. You're not going to be comparing yourself to a meditation master, somebody who's been doing it every day for 3 years or 5 years or 20 years. Compare yourself to who you were and where you were yesterday. Oh, you did 0 seconds of meditation yesterday. You did 30 today. Oh, you did a minute today. You did 30 yesterday. Oh, I did 20 minutes today. I know that 3 years ago, I was doing 2 minutes a day. And that's something that I really want to try to hammer home, that I always talk about on your personal development journey. There's no reason to compare yourself to anybody else. You're not going to get any benefit out of that other than maybe a little ego boost. And that's another thing of why maybe people try to bully other people, because they want to get that ego boost of being superior to somebody else. And, oh, I beat that guy up, or I beat him up emotionally, because you can often beat somebody up worse emotionally than physically and leave them kind of those emotional scars longer than they really were. But another way that you can kind of heal those emotional scars is through meditation, through experiencing, because a lot of the things is that we try to bottle them up. We try to push them down and hope that they're going to go away. And the thing is that the pain's going to come up eventually, but it's whether you want it to come up on your own time when you're ready for it, or whether it's going to come at a very inconvenient time that you're going to have to deal with and will be multiplied because you're making it a bigger issue. It's kind of snowballing. It's
Yeah,
snowballing into something bigger than it is.
I think that you were saying about like comparing yourself to somebody else. It's one of those things in today's society, because a lot of people are doing it, and I think one of the main reasons that they are doing it is because if you look at something like social media, like if you look at something like Instagram specifically, you'd think that, oh, I wish I could be that. I wish I could be this. Look at them. They're in this place. They're in that place. When it's all smoke and mirrors. Like on the receiving end, that person who owns that Instagram account or YouTube or whatever you're looking at, like it was saying about the veil thing, like in the real life, the veil's lifted, but when they're on Instagram or social media stuff, the veil's down. And I think it just shows that, like people, it's damaging people's mental health, because it's like, oh, I want to be like this, I want to do this, I want to do that. Um, and I think that, like when that doesn't happen, people get upset, they get depressed and anxious, and that's when all the thoughts start coming in, etc. And like you were saying before about the bullying thing, like saying about a little bit of an ego boost, comparing yourself to somebody else, when in actual fact, the lesson here is to, the only person you should compare yourself to is yourself. Like, I know I go back to Doctor Who, and obviously I use this quote in my podcast as well, but the Matt Smith regeneration quote, talking about, like how we're all different people all through our lives. That's okay, that's good, because you've got to keep going as long as you remember all the people that you used to be. And that quote again applies here, because if you're looking at it, like we're saying, you should only compare yourself to yourself. You know, like I can say I'm not the same person that I was a year ago, you know, and a year ago I was worse off than I am now. Like I say, this is probably the happiest period of my life right now. And as long as you remember all the people, different personalities that you were throughout the years, you know, going forward, mentally, you're going to feel so much better about yourself rather than comparing yourself to somebody else who's got a completely different life to you.
Yeah, I love how you bring that up because social media often comes up on this podcast because it's such a deep-seated issue. And I know that when I was going through mental health issues, social media definitely played a role in that and me trying to compare myself to other people. But then again, when you kind of go behind the smoke and mirrors, you first realize that you're seeing somebody else's highlights. People are only posting their best moments on social media. Then again, they might not even be real highlights. People can be posting fake things, fake filters, fake angles, photoshopping themselves, and trying to compare yourself to one of that. Like, obviously, it's hard to not when it's so ingrained in your mind. But when you start to understand that these people are extremely insecure about themselves, also, they're doing it for validation. And part of the thing is, there's no reason to blame yourself because social media is designed to make you addicted. Social media is designed to make you mad because the way to get you back on the platform is to make you mad. If you were just happy and content with yourself and truly loved yourself, you might not even have any need to be on social media, but they want to make you feel like you're incomplete, like there's some type of FOMO that you're going to miss something if you don't go onto Instagram. Have you ever seen the documentary The Social Dilemma on Netflix?
I've never watched it, no, but I have heard about it actually before.
I would 100% recommend it. It'll be very eye-opening to you. But where my story begins with that, so I saw one of the people in that documentary I go to UMass, came to UMass a couple of years ago to speak on a book tour. He published a book. It was called Zucked, Waking Up to the Facebook Catastrophe. And I learned about most of the stuff through watching this guy speak and then reading the book. And it was very eye-opening. This guy was one of the first early investors in Facebook, and he loved it, and he thought his investment was great, and he was helping the world for like 10 or so years. And then at around 2016, he realized all the bad stuff that was going on behind the scenes, how this was going on with all the other social media platforms as well, and now is working to really help the other side of it to help bring this stuff to light. So he teamed up with a bunch of other people in this documentary, and it says a lot of the stuff in the book, but the thing what's so eye-opening about the documentary about how they show it right in your face. You're really able to visualize it. You're able to put imagery on it, while a book you're not as able to visualize it so easily. But one of the big things is that, and if you watch it, definitely let me know what you think. But the thing that really messed me up was when they show this voodoo doll, and it's basically you. It's the user is the voodoo doll, and they can make you do whatever they want you to do pretty much because they have it down to a science that, oh, we want him to go on to this app. We'll send him this notification from this person because we know they have a 75% greater chance to open it if it's this person, or this type of notification that has this type of thing. And it was so eye-opening to me. I watched this in September of last year that I instantly deleted all my social media apps, was off social media for about 4 months. I actually made a video 30 days into it, 30 days without social media, sharing my experience. But even 30 days was amazing, but 4 months is nothing can
Yeah,
mess with you. It really starts to show you what really matters in your life, who really matters in your life, because your real friends, you're still going to be in contact with them. You're going to be texting them, seeing them in person. Um, Maybe not in person because of the pandemic, so Zoom, but
yep.
it shows you who's real and who you don't really actually want to see or need to see, but they make you feel like you need to see that because they get you addicted to it. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think one of the concepts that I think is probably worth talking about is the difference between dependence and independence. Because, you know, with the rise of social media, all that kind of stuff, like you're saying, like the way they hook you in is you know, if it's a particular person that you really care about and all that kind of stuff, you care about opinions, etc., or if you just think as a role model, you know, you go to a certain app and all that kind of thing. And that just shows a sign of dependence, because the difference between the two is obviously like if you're dependent on other people for happiness, all that kind of stuff, opinions, etc., validation. Whereas, you can tell who the happy ones are, the independent people, the people who are happy and content with oneself, people who, show self love and, they're happy with who they are as a person rather than depend on other people for happiness, validation, etc. Because I think that's one of the dangerous things to get into in terms of mental health is when you're talking about being dependent, and it's quite a toxic thing to think about, really, because it can actually more damage you thinking that, oh, like this person's making me happy, etc. But then when that doesn't go to plan, you're upset. So in the actual long run, it's actually quite damaging. Whereas if you were independent, obviously not really bothered about what other thinks, opinions, etc. You contend with oneself. You love who you are, which my story specifically is definitely like for many years I was a dependent person. I was dependent on other people to make me happy. Whereas now I can actually truly say for once in my life, I'm independent. There's a lot of self-love going on. There's a lot of, I'm just happy. Like I say, it's the happiest moment of my life. And I think a lot of people need to realize the difference between those two things.
That's awesome. I love that 100% because that's what it is. If you make your happiness dependent on other people telling you about your worth, then, or just your sense of worth dependent on other people telling you that you're worthy, you're only going to have that sense of worth as long as the praise keeps coming in. But what's going to happen when those people start turning on you and they start speaking negatively about you? There's going to go your sense of self worth. The only way it's going to be permanent is if it comes from within. And again, talking about something like this, I know it sounds simple, but I'm a person that didn't ever feel like they were worthy. And when you go the first 18, 19 years of your life like that, it takes some time. It takes some effort. It takes some discipline, some patience, and consistency to reprogram your mind, as I'd call it, reprogram your mind to become more loving, to become more positive, to become more just sure of yourself and confident in your self worth. And again, that's the stuff that social media tries to get you not to do. And that's part of
Yeah.
my goal to try to make social media more positive, to try to share my message and share the wisdom that I've acquired on my journey. But one of the things that I'll always say, and I keep saying it, and it's funny that I say it, but you shouldn't look to other people, to influencers on social media for advice. Look if you want to learn something, or if you want some wisdom, or if you just want to see what they do, but trust your own opinions, trust your gut, make your opinions informed on a bunch of different things. Don't just look to one person and take their advice and follow that because you're giving your power away to somebody else. You're not actually thinking for yourself. And what I want people to do is to start thinking for themselves, to start going into themselves, to start finding out who they truly are. Because I did not know who I truly was for so long until I started doing things for self discovery, such as journaling, meditation, making music. And what are some things that you've done for this kind of journal, or not journaling, but self discovery?
Um, to be honest, one of the things that I've done for self discovery is more just about it's kind of hard to describe it. Like I say, it's all because I tried journaling. It didn't really work for me as such. Um, but I suppose more about just focusing on the specific things in my life, like specifically Warhammer, tennis, like those things, the things that I've got, rather than focusing on the things that I've not got, because that's one of the things. Well, I think most people will go through is they focus on the things they don't have rather than the things they have. And again, it's all going back to this provisional vision without actually seeing the whole perspective, the whole bigger picture. You sort of got this narrow approach, thinking, "Oh, I've not got this. I'm not as good as him." It's all this kind of stuff. And I suppose I've just been trying to focus on, especially my tennis, improving my skills, getting better, just being content and happy with that. With Warhammer, it's just building and painting to relax, all that kind of stuff. And I suppose as well, just being around my friends, because at the end of the day, like my friends, they're the ones who are always there for me, and my family as well. Just focusing on the people I have got in my life. Because one of the key things for me is that I'd always focus on not having a girlfriend around me, which is kind of a dangerous, toxic thing to be in the mindset of, rather than focusing on, oh, I've actually got friends around me who care about me. I don't actually need that. It's about convincing yourself that it's not something you need, it's something you want, which I think is something as well as there needs to be a clear distinction in terms of most people's mindsets is, convincing yourself that that's actually a want, that's not a need. You don't need this, you want this. But because you think that you need it, you're getting yourself into this mental mindset of, like if you don't get it, you're going to be disappointed, and for me specifically, it's like I say, it's like turning my mind to thinking about my family, my friends, Warhammer, tennis, all that kind of stuff, and everything else that's going on around me.
Yeah, and specifically about the relationship thing, because this is a topic I'll always talk about now, it's that you don't need to be in a relationship to feel loved. You can feel loved right now. It's a decision. The love is already inside you. You only be in a relationship when you have so much love inside you that you want to start giving it out to other people. When your cup is overflowing to the point where you want to and need to share it with other people. And also when you're on your path and on your journey and expressing your truth and finding your passions, you're going to meet somebody organically like that to the point where if you had forced it before, you might have not found the right person. And it always just works out that obviously some people don't believe that, oh, it's meant to be and it always just works out. But it's always like that. It always works out to the exact way it's supposed to be. But it also has to do with trusting the universe and trusting if this is right for me. But you also have
Yeah.
to think about is where does this desire come from? Is it really your desire, or is it that your parents want you to be in a relationship and you want them to think of you differently or something like that? And a lot of people, I feel, are modeling their lives based on what their parents want for them, even unconsciously, because I know that that's what I used to do so much, unconsciously not becoming aware of that. So if you start to becoming aware of what you're doing, why you're doing it, is this something that you truly want to do? And just that introspection, because it sounds like what you're doing is that you're introspecting maybe without even knowing it.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, to be honest. It's like one of those things. Like I was talking to me when I was doing all the therapist stuff about, like she was actually talking to me about the difference between the wants and the needs. Because it's all about, like you say, like you might feel that, for example, say that if in the perspective of social media, if you were looking at it and thinking, I need to be big on YouTube to be this, that, to be successful, all that kind of stuff. And then when it doesn't happen, you get really disappointed, or you might get bullied, etc., all that kind of stuff. Rather than, oh, I want this to happen. It's like with anything with a relationship, you might think that, oh, I need to be in a relationship to be happy. When, like you were saying before, like you don't need a relationship to be loved. You can just love oneself. Like you say, it all comes from in here within. It's all about getting to the point where you can be content with yourself, where you're happy with yourself, like that you're happy with who you are as a person, and nobody can take that away from you, because at the end of the day, like no one actually can take that personality away from you, because that's who you are inside. And I think it's important for people to remember that, like some people might not feel self-worth, when actually everyone on this planet, every single individual on this planet is unique, and in actual fact that uniqueness makes everyone on this planet deserving of self-worth.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also the point that, and I'll obviously always want to keep hammering this home, is that our society tries to tell people that they're not worthy. And it has to do a lot with just capitalism and buying stuff, but that you're not you're not worthy, so you need to go buy something that'll make you feel worthy or that'll make you feel more complete. So it's kind of like you have this hole within you. I know I used to have this hole or this void within me that you try to fill from without you. You try to fill them with food or with money or with drugs, all these things that are temporary and not very healthy, until you find out that the only way this hole is going to get filled is from within, from your own inner well of love, your inner well of bliss, whatever you want to describe it with. But I've just noticed that with, maybe this is why I was drawn to poetry, is that you can create these concepts and these ways to make these things that are very abstract, very visual. So one of the things that I talk about in my first book is the mental alchemist, or practicing mental alchemy, which is alchemy, turning the coal into gold. And what is the coal? The negative emotions, the depression, the mental health issues, turning them into gold. The gold is the self love, the inner peace. And just from my example, know that you can do that. if you want to be a mental alchemist or an emotional magician practicing mental alchemy, you're going to have to learn it. You might have to teach it to yourself. You might have to learn it from somebody else, but it is 100% possible. Just take it from my experience. And it's 100% possible looking at your experience, because without even knowing it or without even looking at it through this frame, you've done the exact same thing. The mental alchemy of turning the coal into gold.
Yeah, it's honestly like in terms of my story, like like honest, it's taken me years and years to get to the point where I am now, and obviously if you look at everyone retrospectively, everyone's got their own different time scale. Like someone might take a couple more years than me, but eventually they will get to that point. They'll feel better for it. Some people it happens sooner. It's all about your different time clock, I suppose. Like for me, it was like 5 6 years. To get to this point now. Like I'm 21 now, and I honestly wish that it had happened sooner, but obviously maybe it was just part of the journey. Maybe this was meant to happen. Maybe this was the journey, the path that I was supposed to take to get to the stage where I am now, to be, so much happier in that forest. And I think a lot of people need to realize that, like it will happen for you at some point, as long as you put the effort in, the work in to, get your mind to the state where you feel confident about oneself, showing yourself self-love, make sure you're doing what's best for you. Because like we were discussing earlier, not one thing works for everybody. Everyone's unique. Everyone's different. What might work for one person might be completely different for another person. So it's all about just, pushing through those barriers. And as well, a lot of people I've noticed, especially when you're talking about mental health, are sort of like, oh, nothing's working for me. Just keep trying different things, because eventually you will come across something where you think, hey, this is actually working for me. I'm feeling so much better now. And when that does happen to somebody, because I do know one of my friends who's done that, it took them years to find something, but now they found something to do and they're loving it. And see the smile on their face nowadays, it's so fulfilling to see.
Yeah, and just think about this. Like, I love how you said, like, it took you 6 years, but now that's because you had no guidance. You had nobody who really understood. You had nobody really talking about this stuff. And now, at least from your story, you could impact somebody who's going through the exact same thing as you. And instead of letting it go for 6 years, they could maybe only take them 4 years or 3 years or even two or one. And just the power of these words, the power of these stories, the power of sharing these things with other people and not keeping them to ourselves. I think it's kind of selfish if people keep it to themselves. Some people might not be comfortable talking about these experiences, but then again, why are they not comfortable? Because there's a stigma around these issues. We're told that you're not supposed to talk about this. You're supposed to keep it bottled up to yourself. And that's selfish. You keeping it all to yourself is just hurting you more. Instead of sharing it with somebody else, maybe somebody might look at you differently, but I'll always say this is that vulnerability is strength. We're taught in society that being vulnerable is weak. And again, it's funny how this all connected. That comes back to the evolutionary phase where 5,000 years ago, if you're being vulnerable, that means you're going to get hunted and killed by a lion or something. And now being vulnerable is being emotionally vulnerable when we don't have these immediate survival threats, which are the lions and the bears and the predators. And we're also trying to hunt them down. But it's interesting how this stuff is all just still ingrained in our subconscious.
You see, this is it. So the whole interconnectivity when it comes to mental health is massive. Like we are all connected in some way, shape, or form. Whether that's mentally or through like mutual friends, etc., all that kind of stuff. But it just goes to show that at the end of the day, like we were saying before, like you might think that you're alone, but in actual fact, there's probably a lot of people on this planet who are going through the exact same thing. All you have to do is ask. All you have to do is just put yourself out there, share your thoughts. What you're feeling. Even if it's just talking to somebody, and you don't have to specifically talk about how you're feeling. Just for someone to ask how you are, that kind of stuff, take your mind off it, just get yourself into some generalized conversation. You don't have to specifically talk about how you're feeling. It might help you get it off your chest and that kind of thing. But if you're not ready for it, like you might feel like, okay, next time might talk about it. But sometimes, just getting into a general conversation, because I know specifically with me, sometimes I might not want to talk about something. And I'll be talking to my friends, and we'll talk about something completely different just to take my mind off it, and then eventually I might open up to it, rather than open up to it straight away.
Yeah. And I really enjoy how you said that. It's the same thing as that people think vulnerability is weakness when it's strength. It's the same thing that asking for help is a sign of strength. It's not a sign of weakness. And I know this from my experience because when I was too afraid to ask for help when I was going through my mental health issues, that was me being weak. That was my ego, my fear getting the best of me. And then when I became vulnerable and asked for help, the courage to ask for help, people don't talk about this also. It requires courage, it requires humility. Not a lot of things that are talked about. Humility is one thing that's not really talked about in our society at all, but having the courage, having the humility to ask for help, it almost feels as though you've been carrying this 5,000 pound boulder in your mind. And the moment you tell somebody you're not well or ask for help, you're kind of just, maybe it just disintegrates because it wasn't real in the first place. But maybe it's just like you throw it off the mountain and you're done with it and it's in the past now.
Yeah, I honestly completely agree with you. And, it goes back to what we're saying as well about education, educating people about these different concepts, these core themes, because, a lot of people don't realize that, like you say, vulnerability is actually strength. Having the courage to ask somebody or say, oh, I need help. Those three words are quite impactful. It's courage. You need courage to actually say that to somebody. Like you say, like with anything really, all you have to do is ask. Because if you keep it bottled up and that, you're going to feel so much worse off for it. And I think that nowadays there should be more programs, especially through the media as well, because I don't think the media is doing enough in terms of mental health, and I'm pretty sure you'd agree, that it needs to be broadcasted more, and it needs to be talked about a lot more often, just to get the word out there. Because obviously, even if it means like saying the same stories, saying the same themes over and over again until people understand, if that's what it takes, I think it'll be 100% worth it. And especially in younger people in today's society, especially with the rise of social media, because it's only going to get worse, I think, from here in terms of the way you look at social media and mental health. Um, I think it needs to be definitely put into different schemes, etc. I think as well, the government should maybe implement different courses and that for people to undertake, or even just put out general flyers, to promote this kind of thing, because I think it will actually impact the society. It'll be beneficial as a whole.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I'm skeptical of that. I don't think it's going to happen through the media because as we've seen, the media and social media, they're drawn off of money, advertising money off of clicks. They want to get you to stay on the platform as long as possible. So they know that the way to get you to stay there is by hate and negativity because they're not going to get you to stay on the platform if you don't feel like you're missing inside. So I think the real movement is going to be a grassroots movement, individuals, people like me, people like you, interviewing other people, sharing our stories, sharing what has helped for us, trying to uplift and empower other people to work together. The next podcast I have is helping break the stigma of mental health together. We can't do it individually. And this is another thing that's huge. I used to think that I could do this all by myself, but I'm just one person. I know that I need the help. It's not me saying that I'm weak. It's me saying that there are 8 billion people on this planet and there's one of me, but there are millions of other people that have experienced these mental health issues that I could be talking to, hearing their perspective, that other people could be hearing their perspectives, even without even talking to me. So it's the whole thing that when we work together, when we rise up, and my goal used to be to try to get this into the education system, but I feel like I was a little too short-sighted because I think they're still a little too stuck in the past, stuck in that, oh, these skills don't need to be taught in school, which is complete BS because those are the most important skills that can be taught in the school. But I also know that what I'm doing right now is by posting on social media is that the people that consume my content are coming there because they want to see it. And when you're in school, you're a little apprehensive to learning, to getting lectured because they look at education from the wrong standpoint. Education is supposed to be entertaining. And our school system has it kind of backwards. It kind of sucks the desire out of people that love to learn. I know that it did for me. Did you have that same experience?
I think that what I found, specifically in terms of going back to school, etc., If the teacher was ambitious and you could tell that they had a passion for the subject they were teaching, you'd love it in the long run. You take interest, you'd do well in it. Whereas if you look at some teachers and you're thinking, why are you teaching this particular subject? Why are you educating people about this? When you can clearly see that they're not happy to, well, they don't want to be there. You can just see it in their eyes. They don't want to be there. And I think that's the problem nowadays. Like, some people become teachers and they're not actually passionate about the subject that they're teaching. And I think that causes issues where I think it generalizes the perspective of people in education that, the students themselves don't want to be there. They don't want to be there as such as a teacher want to be there. Whereas, like, some of the teachers that I had, they were really passionate about what they were teaching. And I actually took interest in that particular subject when that occurred.
I really like that perspective because I didn't think about it from that point. That because I'm thinking about teachers that I've had that are really passionate, and those are the people that are going to make their class entertaining, but also they're going to make the class entertaining, and you're going to take more out of that class than you're going to take out of any other class. And you're not always going to remember what you learned, but you're going to remember the impact that that teacher had on you. Maybe that teacher inspired you to go into that field because you saw how passionate they were and you really vibed with them. And I feel like that's with me in mental health, emotional intelligence, self-love. As you can tell, these are things that I'm just very passionate about talking about, that I would love to talk about this with anybody anytime. But the problem is, I haven't met a lot of people, or before I started doing this podcast, I didn't meet a lot of people that like talking about this stuff or were even open to talking about this stuff. So even just starting this podcast and finding other people who are interested in self-love, emotional intelligence, mental health, now that I know that these people are out there, it's awesome to see, because now I basically have my own classroom, which is I I do my teaching and I post them online, and you can come whenever you want. It's not just you go to school at 8 and leave at 2 or 8 to 3, whatever time school goes to these days. It's that you can watch it anytime you want, and you're watching it in your free time. You're watching it because you choose to, and I think that that's very powerful.
Yeah, 100% agree with you there. Like honestly, what you're doing is incredible, and like, all of the work that you've put out is just amazing. Because obviously, I see a lot of your TikToks, Instagram, and stuff like that. And I think as well, like the people who obviously, like you say, who want to come and see that content will consume your content. Like you say, rather than being stuck in like a school from like 8 till 2, or for me it was like 9 till about 4 o'clock. I think as well, because you're so obviously so passionate about this as well, that also helps spread your message even further. Like we were saying about teachers before, the more passionate they are, the more likely you're to take something away from that class. Whereas if you weren't passionate about it, then people would take less from that class or just dismiss it completely. But because obviously I know that you're 100% passionate about this, a lot of people, will take more from your message. And that's honestly a really beautiful thing, which is what you've done there.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And also, I know one of my goals in the near future, maybe a little sooner or later, is that I know I need to make my content more like entertaining, try a little harder on that aspect. My content, sorry, I don't know why I couldn't think of the word. My content at this point has been maybe 95% education, 5% entertainment. And I know that to reach the largest audience and have the biggest impact, and I know that I've had a big impact and I'm very content with that, but you always want more. You always know that you can help more people. I know that at some point, my content's going to need to be 80% entertainment and 20% education. Fusing
Yeah.
those things, combining those things. And it's obviously going to be a learning experience. But again, it's a challenge that I'm up for. And anything that you're passionate about, I talked about this in a video yesterday. Anything that you're passionate about is going to be challenging you. Your passion isn't going to be something that comes easily. You're passionate about tennis. Tennis doesn't come easily to you. You have to work hard and you have to train to get better. If you don't play tennis for 3 months, you're going to not be as good as if you had played every single day for that 3 months. It's the same thing with making content. It's the same thing with meditation. It's the same thing with cold showers. But people don't think about things these ways because we're not taught this stuff, first of all, but we're also not made aware of the importance of repetition. And that's another thing, that a lot of my work, pretty much all of my work, is about reprogramming your mind. And is that a subject that you've ever heard anything about, reprogramming your mind?
Yes, I only know very little about this particular subject. Um, I suppose, like you said, like reprogramming your mind. I think one of the key things as well is that, like I think you were saying about like making your content like 80% educational, 20% entertainment. I think one of the key problems with today's society and individuals is short attention spans. Like most people nowadays, like I'd probably say about maybe 60% of people on this planet or something like that, which is a lot of people. They have a short attention span about something. So especially over something educational, something that that they could actually learn from, but they just dismiss it because they think that, oh, this is boring. I want to skip over to this guy on TikTok doing this silly dance or whatever. It's I think that's one of the key things, like reprogramming your mind, like changing people's attitudes towards things. Taking something negative, turning it into something positive, changing your attitude, your outlook on life, everything around you, seeing how beautiful the world is and reprogramming your mind rather than focusing on things that you don't have to things that you do have, all those kind of concepts.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And I used to be one of those people that was trying to look down on that about how all these kids growing up now have such short attention spans. But then again, I cannot blame them at all because they've been forced iPads and iPhones when they're 8 or 9. And I know that if I had that stuff when I was 8 or 9, I would have a short attention span too. So it's my challenge as a teacher because I know that my demographic is maybe 12 to 18-year-olds, maybe middle school and high school. That's when these mental health issues start to come up and start to rise up. So now that I know that these people don't have the longest attention spans, I need to pack as much wisdom, as much teaching into a 7-second video or a 15-second video. So my lessons unorthodoxly, if that's even a word, in an unorthodox way, I'm basically teaching 1 or 2 sentences at a time. And the reason that it's going to work so well is because I understand how this reprogramming your mind works. It works through repetition. This is another huge concept that I hope you'll gain benefit out of because I know how much it benefited out of me. I talked about this throughout my whole first book. Actually, might as well plug it. It's the podcast. You
There
know
you
who
go.
you are, but it's about how you can compare your mind to a garden. Your mind is a garden. What type of garden is it? Are there a bunch of weeds or are there beautiful trees and flowers and fruits? And did you know that you are in control of your mind's garden? That you can plant seeds of love and plant seeds of peace. But the problem is that any seed, your mind is so fertile, your subconscious mind is so fertile that any seed that you plant in there is going to grow eventually. And are you always aware of the seeds that you're planting? Because if you're not consciously choosing to plant seeds of love, to plant seeds of peace, then you're basically at the mercy of what society is planting into you, what you're watching through a TV show, all this negativity. So my mind, I was so pessimistic and so negative. And for a while, I just thought, well, that's just how I am. I'm just a pessimistic person. And then once I learned about all this stuff, about how I could reprogram my mind and meditate and practice gratitude and plant seeds of love and plant seeds of peace, that metaphor or that way of looking at it just completely changed my mind. And again, it's something that's so important that when you plant a seed to grow a tree, you're not going to see the tree just sprout up immediately. But if you stop watering it, or if it's a flower, if you stop watering the flower, if you don't give the flower sunlight, it's not going to grow. You're not going to always tell that it's growing, but if you don't do all this stuff consistently, it's not going to grow.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? Like you're using the metaphor, obviously, with seeds there. I'm going to use the metaphor now, in terms of something like a virus, for example. So if you're looking at young people, as soon as one kid has got negative ideals or just like the like learning things like nasty comments, all that stuff, considering these kind of things to be the norm. Because the thing is, what I've noticed as well from TikTok lives is, I don't know if you've ever had it, where people are saying like shout out to such and such, but it's actually like a rude name or unfortunately a racist name or something like that. Some of those are kids behind those screens. So if I was going to put this metaphorically, as soon as one kid gets into that thing thinking, oh, this is a norm, this is okay to do this, they then pass it on to their friends. So therefore, you now got what? Maybe there's a group of 4 friends. So there's 4 more people who now think this is a norm, and it just spreads and spreads and spreads and spreads. Like we're all connected. Like we were saying before, we're all connected, but that can also be in some cases from a negative standpoint in terms of something like that, like it's something like a virus, it gets passed on, and I think that kids just need to be properly educated to prevent that from happening. To plant these, instead of having a virus, plant seeds of love, seeds of self-care, looking at the people around you, asking how people are, all these kind of things, rather than spreading this negative virus around, and then society just sees this as a particular norm.
Yeah, and one of the great things that I know about the work that I'm doing is that if you just see a 7-second video of me talking about self-love and how you deserve more respect, that's planting the seed in your mind without you even having to do it yourself. But then you could see the video and think, oh, why don't I start talking to myself like that? Why don't I start showing myself more love and respect? So there's two levels to it where it could be planting the seed in your mind without you knowing it, but the second level, which is what I hope more people, that they'll see it and then start thinking, oh, I can start talking to myself like this. And that's the way that it goes quicker, but it'll still happen if you're just unconsciously soaking in all this knowledge. And I also love the way that the comparison with the virus, because think about this, the way content goes viral on social media. It's the same word, it's the same root. And what kind of content goes viral easiest on social media? It's the negative. And
Yeah.
why is it so? It might have something to do with our psychology, how we like negative things more. That might be more interesting to us. That's something that we've brought up a ton. But the point is there, like, it's basically, I compare social media to the new Vegas. It's the new casino. And instead of playing for money, you're playing for people's attention, which could honestly be more addicting to money. And you're not putting your own money in, you're putting your own time and energy and attention into basically putting it into the roulette machine or the slot machine and trying to go viral on TikTok or trying to go viral on Instagram or any of this stuff. And if you have the expectation of that, I won't love myself unless I go viral, that's a very dangerous mindset to go into, because again, you're putting your happiness or your sense of worth somewhere outside of you, to the point where you might never be able to get it back unless you take it back from that thing.
Yeah, literally 100%. Like, the things that he's saying, like the things that do go viral, unfortunately, are the negative things, which I suppose that, the human psychology is like, oh, this is more interesting, like dark humor jokes, offensive jokes, like all that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, most of that is the stuff that goes viral. Not to say there isn't positive things that go viral, like dances and all that kind of stuff, people just being themselves, being good people. But unfortunately, there is a high proportion of negative content that goes viral. And I think, in today's society, it just shows the psychology, or the attitudes, like you're saying about like mental reprogramming, the attitudes of people need to change. Like all this negativity is just going to cause more negativity down the line. It's just adding more things to the pot. It's going to create a society. If you look at it, the society in like 10, 20 years time, there'll probably be a lot more negativity unless, something changes.
I hope something changes, and I hope I'm part of that change. But I just know that my mission statement is, I want to help people train your mind to find the divine inside. Obviously, poetry, gotta love the rhymes, but it's so simple that in that one sentence I can say what I want to do. And I know that any single person can train their mind to find the divine inside. You don't need to spend any money. You just need to spend your time, effort, energy, and have patience. And it's something that's so simple that it's not even that I'm trying to sell you anything. I want to have all my information be out there for free. But I also know that if you like what I'm doing and have found value, then you can support me by buying a book or buying a shirt to then wear this stuff and spread the energy, or buying a mask, things like that. So that's kind of the business model that I'm trying to run off of now, because I truly do believe that education should be free, and that a lot of this paying all this money to go to college for an education that might not really be worth it, or all this stuff doesn't really seem to be working for a lot of people as our society kind of evolves. And oh, well, I could have learned all of this stuff on YouTube for free. So is the piece of paper that I'm getting worth the opportunity cost of the time I'm spending, the energy I'm spending? And obviously, college is great for it, networking and meeting new people. And that's kind of the point of it now. But then again, now that it's online, are you really making those same connections?
Yeah, like I honestly completely agree with you. You know, like what you're doing is amazing. You know, all the content you create, it's all there for free. You know, and I think that the problem I think with uh, nowadays is, you know, like businesses, corporations, all that kind of stuff. You know, like obviously you're doing it for free, you're doing the right thing, whereas some businesses do it for money, which is, you know, I think is really cruel. And it's just one of those things where businesses are like, like we're going to give you all this information, but we're going to profit from it, which in that case they're actually not practicing what they preach. You know what I mean? It's just one of those unfortunate situations. But a lot of people need to start doing like what you're doing, like just giving it out there for free. Whereas, like I say, corporations just are more interested in the money, and that's just, you know, that's just today's society, and it's just one of those things.
I think it really all boils down to the business model that you're working under. And I feel like I didn't I didn't understand or come to the conclusion that this is the business model that I wanted to pursue until this week. I had been putting out all this content and then I realized, wow, why would I ever want to make anybody pay for this? I know that if I'm really providing somebody the value that I know that I'm providing, then oh, maybe they'd want to I could have a Patreon and they'd pay me maybe $1 a month for the value I'm providing. Things like that. But you just don't feel like you're getting the value. If you don't feel like you're getting value from it, I know that my content isn't for everybody and nobody's content will ever be for everybody. But I do know that there are 8 billion people in the world, and for my content to reach 100,000 people or 1 million people, how small of a percentage that is, how small of a niche that is, where I know that there are way more people than that that are interested in these topics. But a big part of it is that a lot of people don't know that they're interested in these topics because they've never been taught them in school. I didn't know that I was interested in these topics until I was 20 and started reading books, as you can see behind me. I didn't know that I like to read books, as crazy as this may sound,
Yeah.
until I started college and realized that I could buy my own books. I don't know if you've had this experience, but I felt as though most of the books I read in middle school and high school were useless. They didn't have any correlation with anything that I was going to do in life. We didn't read any books about business or psychology, how to help yourself. What about you?
I think this is that's a very interesting point, because I think in terms of education nowadays, what's not talked about enough is life skills, things that you're going to need in later life, rather than teach you, because most schools teach you something that's completely and utterly useless to you. You know what I mean, in terms of later life, and you know, unless you go into that specific area, of course. I know, like for example, if you're looking at something like a maths class or something like that, obviously, like most people probably won't use maths and algebra, algorithm, all that kind of stuff until unless you are going into that specific area. But life skills, you know, like how to pay taxes, how to, you know, work with the government, how to mental health, all that kind of stuff. Like we do have a course called PGHSCE, I think, so it's something along those lines. Can't remember which order the letters go in. But it was like 1 hour every month, and that's all we got. Like, and nowadays you look at it, you go into college and you're thinking, well, I'm going to have a part-time job, all this kind of stuff going on in my life as well, and I don't really know what I'm doing, but I should have done when I left high school. You know, sure it's the same for you when you left like middle school, for example. It's, you know, it needs to be taught a lot more than it is. And in terms of reading, actually, because I'm a bit of a funny one when it comes to reading. I'm not really that. I don't really read books as such. The only books I do read are Warhammer books, because I take an interest in that kind of thing. But I prefer to like watch something educational rather than read it. But that's just me. That's just my personal aesthetic. You know, that's just what personally works for me, is to rather watch something on a video than it is to read, I suppose. But I do read from time to time, like I say, with the Warhammer books.
Yeah, and I like that you brought that up also because that's the thing. Everybody has a unique learning style, and that's another thing that our school takes for granted. Our school system currently makes everybody do the same thing and take the same tests. And you might think, well, what are the alternatives? The alternatives could be, first of all, not having as test heavy of a curriculum based on multiple choice tests because you're never going to take a multiple choice test in your job or your career, whatever you do. Make it more written based, emotionally expressing yourself, maybe trying to find your passions and all this stuff. But it leads back to me thinking that So when I was in kindergarten or whatever, I'm not sure if they call it that in UK, but your first year in school, in elementary school, you're taught the numbers and the letters, and that's great. Why aren't you taught how to meditate? Why aren't you taught how to sit there and just breathe? Because that's the type of stuff you should be teaching people in their first year of school. The very simple stuff, the foundational stuff, the numbers, the letters, how to communicate. The numbers and letters, think about this. They teach you how to communicate with other people. But the
Yeah.
meditation teaches you how to communicate with yourself.
Well, I think that if you were to put it into a methodological perspective, if you were taught so put it into perspective of like a building, right? If you didn't have the foundations, what would happen to that building? That building would collapse. So it's all just about like, especially with the education system, just getting to a stage where you're teaching people all these kind of just basic things like that they're going to use in later life just to help them out. Because I think schools nowadays they just completely ignore that. It's all about getting people straight into like maths and English, which is fine, which is great. That's that skills you can use. But in terms of like the generalized life skills, it's not taught enough. It's like that foundation, like I was saying. No, without that foundation, the building's just going to collapse. And I think that's the case with if you're linking it to mental health. It's like you've got like, oh yeah, you've got like stage 2 of a building, but where's stage 1? It's all just a building ready just to go like this and fall over.
I like that metaphor. I'm gonna share a little different perspective, but it's along the same exact lines. And I actually like that building metaphor because it helps you visualize all right, say you have this tall skyscraper, but the foundation is pretty weak. What if something comes into that? You can just think about the huge crash and the burn. And also there could be people in there. It could be hurting other people. Your mental health could be hurting other people if you're taking it out on others. I like to look at it as a tree. Think about a tree, and obviously the foundation are the roots. So you're learning the numbers and the letters, and that's your foundation for communicating with others. But your foundation for communicating with yourself, with your mental health, is through meditation and learning about mental health and emotional intelligence. And what this does is makes you rooted into yourself. As a tree, you're rooted into the ground, into who you really are. But the problem is, if you're not rooted into that stuff because you haven't been taught it, you get to the point where you are in middle school and high school and people start bullying you and people start sharing bad words, which they're going to do because they're not rooted in their self. But think about that as the wind blowing. The wind is going to knock you over and it's going to be hard to get up because if you're a tree and you got knocked over by a windstorm, you're not going to be able to get up by yourself. And it's a great metaphor that you're going to need somebody else to help you get up and put you back in and basically root yourself back into the ground and rebuild that foundation that you've never built before. It's actually a great metaphor. I'm glad that we're talking about
Yeah.
this because you just think about all this stuff. And it's also the thing about how the wind doesn't even have to be that great of a strength. The person's comment doesn't even have to be that mean in the grand perspective of it. It could have been a lot meaner, but you weren't taught how to not care about what others think and be independent and all this stuff. So it doesn't matter because your tree wasn't even rooted in. So even the slightest of wind could have knocked it down. Where if somebody is completely rooted in, they could have the strongest of wind. Somebody could say the meanest thing ever about anything. And that person is just so rooted in who they are. And they know, wow, I love myself. Well, this person clearly is trying to make me not feel like that. I should show this person compassion because clearly they're in a bad state where they need to try to drag me down.
Yeah, like, honestly, like these metaphors are just so applicable to everyday society, in terms of individuals as well. And honestly, I think a lot of people could take away from stuff like you're saying about the tree situation, like I was saying with the building situation. It's all about those basic foundations, that basic infrastructure of your mind as such. So if you could look at the infrastructure of the mind, to then go on and build on that. Because, like you say, like I was saying with the building, you can't have a strong skyscraper with weak foundations.
Yeah, exactly. And that's awesome. I've really enjoyed this conversation and just getting deep into this. Do you have anything else that you'd like to discuss or anything else you'd like to share?
Um, to be honest, I think that's everything really. I've enjoyed, really, really thoroughly enjoyed being on this podcast. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, awesome. It's been great having you also. Again, Ham, I'll drop his links in the bio. And we actually just did a podcast. I was on his podcast, the Hamcast. I'll be sure to put that in the bio because I think that's coming out before this. But I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, special episode, and signing off.